Welcome to Crafty Chemist Designs. In this video, I will show you how to make angled trifold cards. Let's get started. In my first sample, I used the new Wonderland collection. I really love this paper suite. The colors are so amazing. It's a really great winter-themed set. After I made the first sample, I couldn't stop thinking that it looked like Santa's coat with a belt, so I tried to recreate that idea with this second sample. The first thing you need to do is to get a piece of solid colored cardstock. In this sample, I use Wisteria, and cut it to 5.5 by 11 inches. Grab your paper trimmer, and here I'm using a piece of French vanilla for my base. I line it up with the 5.5 inch mark and cut it. Remove the excess piece, and now on this side I need to cut that to be 11 inches. So I'm going to open up the arm on my trimmer and look for the 11 inches. There's the 11-inch mark right there. And I'm going to line the paper up with the 11 inches and give it a cut. So my base is ready. You also need a piece of solid colored cardstock to make the belly band. I like to make it the same color as my base, but you don't have to. And this piece is 1 inch by 10 inches. So I want to take that excess piece of French vanilla that I had and line it up with the 1 inch mark and cut it into a 1 inch strip. And now I need to cut it to be 10 inches wide. So look for the 10-inch mark on your trimmer and line it up with that mark and cut off the end. Okay, and I'll use that for the belly band. Now we're going to do the pattern paper that's on the front of the card. And this needs to be 3¼ by 5¼ inches. I'm using some paper from the Candid Moments collection. This paper is so fun. I thought it would be a great universal design for either a male or female birthday card. So there I cut it at 3¼ and now I'm going to cut it at 5¼ and you do need 2 pieces of this. I flipped it around because I like that side a little bit better, but I'm cutting it at 5¼ Okay, now you can see these are the 2 pieces that I'm going to use on the front of my card. On this particular card, I random stamped on the inside, but in my Santa coat card, you can see I put pattern paper on the inside. So if you're going to use pattern paper on the inside, you also need to cut 2 more sheets that are 3¼ by 5¼ I'm going to use the reverse side of the Candid Moments paper that I used from before, because it coordinates perfectly, and I'm cutting it at 3¼ and then 5¼ again, and 2 pieces. If you just want to random stamp the inside, you don't need to cut these 2 pieces. So there we go. These are going to be used for the inside. Now we're going to do the angled part. And I'm going to measure down 1¾ from each side of the paper and make a little mark. And then you're going to measure in 1 inch from each corner of the bottom. So I'm taking my piece of 5.5 by 11 paper and I'm lining it up on my Versamat. If you don't have a Versamat, you can just measure it with a ruler. And I'm going to measure down 1¾ and put a little teeny pencil mark there. And then on the other side, I'm going to mark 1¾ And now from the bottom left corner, on the bottom side, I'm going to measure in 1 inch and do the same thing from on the right side. And you also need to score the paper, and that is scored in 3 3/8 of an inch. So I'm taking my paper trimmer and I'm going to take off the cutting blade and put on the scoring blade. If you don't have a trimmer like this, you can measure it, mark 3 3/8, and then just use a bone folder or something to score in that area. So there we go, score 3 3/8, and I'm just going to flip it over and score it at 3 3/8 on the other side. Okay, you're going to use those marks when you cut the corners off. So I'm going to cut from that score mark to the 1 3/4 mark that I made on the right side there, and cut that piece off. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side and cut that top part off. So I'm getting my cutter, and I need to put the cutting blade back in. So line up the crease that you made with the scoring blade with the track on your cutting system, and then line that up right on the tick mark that you made at 1 3/4 down, and cut that top part off. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going from the crease in where the score mark was to the 1 3/4 tick mark that I made on the edge, and cut that piece off. So now you have the top pieces cut. Now I'm going to cut from right at the corner down to that 1 inch mark that you made. So I'm going to line up the corner right in the little trough of my cutter, and then line it up the bottom with the 1 inch mark and cut that piece off. So there you go. And then do the same thing on the other side. I'm lining up the corner with the 1 inch mark, and then cutting that piece off. See how easy this is? Now you have your base done. I am going to use my eraser and erase any little bits of pencil that are still showing, especially because this paper is French vanilla and very light, so you can definitely see them. So make sure you just do this very lightly when you're making the tick marks, and don't use pen or markers because you will see that. Now I'm folding along the score mark, and I'm going to try and burnish it pretty well so that it lays flat. So I'm folding it, making sure the bottoms are lined up. And once I'm sure about that, I'm going to crease the edges. I'm taking a little bone folder and rubbing it, burnishing it so that it's a nice crisp fold there. Okay, now we're going to cut the paper, the pattern paper that's going to go on the front. So again, you need to mark 1 3/4 down and then 1 inch in from the bottom. So I'm taking my piece of 3 1/4 by 5 1/4 pattern paper, and I'm marking it at 1 3/4 down the side, and then 1 inch on the bottom from the edge. And here you're going to cut from the corner to the 1 3/4 inch side. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the other side, but here you need to make your marks on the right side of your paper. So I marked 1 3/4 and 1 inch from the bottom. You really need to keep in mind which side of the card it's going to go so that you cut in the right direction. So here I'm going to cut from the corner down to my 1 3/4 inch mark. and cut that top part off. Okay, and now this next part, it takes a little bit of jiggling around. So I'm going to do the other side, and then we'll talk about how to make it fit nicely. So again, cut from the corner to the 1 3/4 inch mark. Make sure you double check that you're cutting in the right direction before you do it. Now you can cut from the corner to the 1 inch mark, but it may not be exactly correct. So what I like to do is line it up how I like it onto my card, and then make little tick marks where you really should cut it. It should be near the corner and around the 1 inch, but it is going to depend on how precisely you cut your base page. And so if you want it to be the best, just take the time to measure it before you cut it. If you're feeling lucky, you can just cut from the corner to the 1 inch, and then it should fit pretty well. But I like to do it this way just so that I know I get a really good fit. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. So I'm lining it up how I'm going to tape it on there. Get it how I like it. And then again with the pencil, I'm going to mark where I want. And I'm trying to leave a little bit of an edge around there, about 1/8 of an inch all around. So I'm making the tick mark where I like it to be at the top and at the bottom. Again, you can cut just from the corner to the 1 inch on the bottom, and then you might have to trim it to get it how you like it. So I just like to mark it before I cut. Again, double check that you're cutting in the right direction. Okay, you can see how nicely it fits right on the front of that card. So that's how it's going to look. Okay, so now I'm going to tape it on. I'm using the new adhesive runner. It's the Tombow Air adhesive runner. I really love this new runner that we have. It's very quiet, it's very fast, and it just works great. I do find it is a little bit stickier than the old adhesive, and so you want to be pretty sure where you're going to place it before you put it down. And now I'm going to put this one on the other side, line it up how I like, make sure it's fitting, and then running the adhesive around the edges. Make sure you get up in the corners so that it stays down nice. Okay, now I'm going to adhere that to the front. Line it up nicely. Okay, so now I have the front done. And on this one, I am going to add that pattern paper that we cut, the second set. Or, like I said before, you can just random stamp or do something there. Or just leave it blank if you want. So I'm taking my 3 3/4 by 5 1/4. And again, marking it 1 3/4 down from the top on the side. And remember, on this one, I'm using the stripe side, so I'm marking 1 3/4 down. And then I'm marking 1 inch from the side on the bottom. And then on the second sheet, you're going to have to do it on the right side of the piece. So mark 1 3/4 inches down and 1 across from the bottom right. So I'm going to go from the corner to the 1 3/4 mark. From the corner to the 1 3/4 mark. Line it up in the trough of your cutter and cut that top part off. And I'm going to fit it onto the inside of the card, make it how I like it. Line it up, leaving a little bit, like an eighth to a quarter inch around the edges, and then mark it to the place that I need to cut it. So this is a little more accurate than just that 1 3/4 and 1 inch mark there. I found that it's almost always a little bit to the inside of that original mark that you made. The first couple samples that I made, I just used the marks that I had made and cut it, and I found that I had to play around a lot more trying to get it to line up. So doing it this way, marking it and then cutting it for that second cut, makes it a lot easier to fit nicely. Okay, so I'm adding this to the inside left of my card. So line it up to leave a little bit of an edge around. Now let's do the same thing with the other sheet so that we can do on the inside right of the card. So I'm cutting from the corner to the 1 3/4 inch mark. And I'm lining it up in that little crease of my cutter. Okay, cutting that top corner off. And again, I'm going to line it up how I like it and put the marks at the exact location that I want it to be. And when you're lining it up, make sure that you are not putting it over the fold, over that scored crease. Okay, and now I'm going to cut in the new marks that I made. So basically from the corner down to the 1 inch. And this should fit fairly nicely because, again, I marked it specifically for that cut. And you can see it looks very nice on there. It fits perfectly. So again, using my Tombow Air Touch Adhesive and going all around the edges. Don't forget to get right up in those corners. Lining it up. And then rubbing it smooth. Okay, there you go. We're almost done. If you notice, the card doesn't sit flat. So that's why you need a belly band. Right? The belly band helps hold it together. And then just slides on and off just like that and holds it closed. So let's take our piece that was 1 inch by 10 inches, and we are going to score it to help us know where to fold it. And I'm going to put my scoring blade back in, and then I'm going to take my piece and I'm going to score it at 2 1/4 inches. You can score the other side, but this way, by just scoring the one side, you can fit it as tight or as loose as you want it when you wrap it around the card. It's going to depend on how thick your paper is, how many layers did you put pattern paper on the inside or not. So it helps just to square the one side and then fold the other side around to make it as thick as you want. I'm going to use adhesive tape on this instead of my tape runner because this holds a little bit stronger, and I feel like that belly band needs to be a little bit stronger because you are sliding that on and off potentially several times. And so I take the adhesive tape and I'm going to put it just right on the edges of both sides of the belly band. So I lay it on the edge and cut it. And then I'm going to, oh, it looks like I need to trim off a little bit so it doesn't stick out. Okay, and I'm going to fold it to make sure I'm putting the adhesive tape on the right side. And I'm going to pull off the backing. It's a little bit hard there. There we go. And I am, again, going to put my card in there so that I know how tight I want it. So you want it to be tight to keep the card closed, but you don't want it to be too tight that it's hard to get on and off. But now you notice that there is a little seam there. So you want to do something that covers that seam. Okay, in this one, I put that stamped image on there to cover the seam. You can see the back, it looks smooth. There's no seam in the back, and that's because I put the stamped image right over the seam. I'm going to use this set because I felt like that flower went with the Candid Moments. I don't have the Candid Moments stamp set that goes with this, and so I felt this was the closest that I could get. And I'm going to use that same color, and it's Papaya that's in the it's in the paper there. So I'm going to ink up my stamp with the Papaya. My block is a little bit small for it, but I'm making it work. Okay, inking it up. And what I like about this stamp is that it is an open design, so the flowers are just sort of lines, and I think, again, it matches that paper. And look at that, beautiful. That Papaya is beautiful. Clean off your stamps. Don't forget to clean it off. Otherwise, the next time you try and use it, it will be a little bit sticky. And then I'm going to just cut around that. You can use, like I said, a stamped image. You can use a die cut. You can use a sticker. But if you use a sticker, you're going to need to maybe tap some of the anti-static pouch on the back so that it doesn't stick. So my advice is to use a stamped image or a die cut. So here I am just going around the edges of the stamp. And if you notice, I'm trying to keep my scissors in the same direction, and I'm turning the cardstock, and that helps you get a smoother edge to your cuts. And I'm just leaving just a tiny bit of the French vanilla white around the edge. So there we go. I think the color and the style totally matches this paper. And I'm going to adhere it, but remember, you only want to adhere it along the center where it's going to be along the belly band. There is some that's going to be sticking above and below the belly band, so I don't want to have any adhesive on that or it will stick to the card. Okay, now we're going to stamp a sentiment on the inside, and I'm going to use this Happy Birthday. It's called Swirly Happy Birthday. I use this stamp so much for the inside sentiment for my cards. You can see it is a well-loved stamp. And I'm going to put it on my block. And I decided to use sapphire. There is sapphire there on that paper, so it will match that. And I'm putting the card on the foam pad to help stamp crisply. And I'm inking up the happy birthday stamp. And make sure there's nothing around the edges. And make sure that where you stamp it, it's going to be below where the two folds, cross over. So you don't want to put it right up at the very top of your card. Otherwise, it will peek through when you close the card. Again, I'm going to wipe off my stamp so that I can use it again nicely the next time. So there you go. With the belly band right on it. And look how cute that card is. Here's the other sample, the first one that I made. And on this one, since I used the darker colored cardstock, I put a lining on the inside. Okay, and that lining is 4 inches by 5 1/4. And on the front of this one, I used solid cardstock. I didn't use pattern, but I did use pattern paper on the inside. And the belly band. Now the belly band, I used a buckle from the purse thin cuts. And if you don't want a belly band because you don't want it to cover the paper, like I really love this paper, what I did is I just stamped a small image and I popped it up on a foam dot. And I put it strategically in a location that will hold the corner of the right side flap in. So that's another idea that you can use if you don't like to do a belly band. So here are my 4 samples. I hope that you liked this tutorial today. If you like anything you see in the video, go to thecraftychemist.ctmh.com. Check out my Facebook group, Crafty Chemist Designs, or join my VIP group, The Crafty Chemist Presents CTMH. Thank you for watching.